the intelligence unit of the Haganah drafted the blueprint for the coming months, codenamed Plan D. It contained direct references both to the geographical parameters of the future Jewish state, the 78% coveted by Ben-Gurion, and to the fate of the 1 million Palestinians living within that space. These operations can be carried out in the following manner: either by destroying villages, by setting fire to them, by blowing them up, and by planting mines in their rubble, and especially those population centers that are difficult to control permanently, or by mounting combing and control operations according to the following guidelines: encirclement of the villages, conducting a search inside them. In case of resistance, the armed forces must be wiped out and the population expelled outside the borders of the state. Villages were to be expelled in their entirety, either because they were located in strategic spots or because they were expected to put up some sort of resistance. These orders were issued when it was clear that occupation would always provoke some resistance and that therefore no village would be immune, either because of its location or because it would not allow itself to be occupied. This was the master plan for the expulsion of all the villages in rural Palestine. Similar instructions were given, with much the same wording, for actions directed at Palestine's urban centers. The orders coming through to the units in the field were more specific. The country was divided into zones according to the number of brigades, whereby the four original brigades of the Haganah were turned into 12 so as to facilitate the implementation of the plan. Each brigade commander received a list of the villages or neighborhoods that had to be occupied, destroyed, and their inhabitants expelled with exact dates. Some of the commanders were overambitious in executing their orders and added additional locations in the momentum their zeal had created. Some of the orders, on the other hand, proved too far-fetched and could not be implemented within the expected time frame. This meant that several villages on the coast that had been scheduled to be occupied in May were not destroyed until July, and the villages in the Wadi Ara area, a valley connecting the coast near Hadera with Marj ibn Amir, Emek, Israel, and Afula, today's Route 65, managed to survive repeated Jewish attacks throughout the war. But they were the exception. The rule was the 531 villages and 11 urban neighborhoods and towns that were destroyed and their inhabitants expelled under the direct orders the consultancy put out in March 1948. By then, 30 villages were, were already gone. A few days after Plan D was typed up, it was distributed among the commanders of the dozen brigades the Haganah now incorporated. With the list each commander received came a detailed description of the villages in his realm of operation and their imminent fate, occupation, destruction, and expulsion. The Israeli documents released from the IDF archives in the late 1990s show clearly that, contrary to claims historians such as Benny Morris have made, Plan Dalet was handed down to the brigade commanders not as vague guidelines, but as clear cut operational orders for action. Unlike the general draft that was sent to the political leaders, the list of villages the military commanders received did not detail how the action of destruction or expulsion should be carried out. There was no specification here for how villages could save themselves, for instance, by surrendering unconditionally, as promised in the general document. There was another difference between the draft handed to the politicians and the one the military commanders were given. The official draft stated that the plan would only be activated after the end of the mandate. The officers on the ground were ordered to start executing it within a few days after its adoption. This dichotomy is typical of the relationship that exists in Israel between the army and politicians up to the present day. The army quite often misinforms the politicians as to its real intentions. Moshe Dayan did so in 1956, Ariel Sharon in 1982, and Saul Mofaz in 2000.